If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be standing in a bathroom, heart pounding like a drum, with my straight best friend on the other side of a foggy shower door, I would have laughed it off as some fantasy born from loneliness. But now, thinking back, maybe the signs were always there, small, fleeting moments I'd brushed off, hidden behind jokes or buried beneath a silence only fear could create. Leo and I had been best friends since 10th grade. We met in history class when we both failed the same pop quiz and ended up laughing our way through detention that afternoon. Since then, we'd been almost inseparable. He was everything I wasn't: outgoing, athletic, easy to talk to, and comfortable in his own skin. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more observant, the kind of guy who blended into the background unless someone needed help with their homework or a ride home. Despite our differences, something just clicked between us. We built our friendship on shared jokes, late-night drives, and countless weekends spent gaming or hanging out at each other's houses. Somewhere along the way, between movie marathons, gym sessions, shirtless summer days, and casual wrestling matches, I started feeling something that went beyond friendship, something I didn't want to admit. Not to myself, and definitely not to him. I told myself it didn't matter. Leo was straight. He dated girls, plenty of them, in fact. He always had a new story about the latest girl who ghosted him or the one who still texted him at 4 a.m. It became a ritual of ours. Me listening, nodding, pretending not to care, all while I tried to ignore the quiet ache that pulsed in my chest every time his smile lit up while talking about someone else. But I never said anything. How could I? It wasn't worth risking everything we had over a feeling I wasn't even sure was real. Besides, it wasn't like he'd ever hinted at anything more than platonic affection, at least not until recently. There had been a few strange moments that left me second-guessing myself, like the time we went swimming last month. He swam up behind me, his hands on my shoulders, lingering a little too long. Or when he crashed at my place after a party and, despite the spare bed being perfectly available, climbed under the covers with me like it was the most natural thing in the world. We didn't say a word about it the next day. Maybe I was reading too much into things, or maybe I didn't know. Maybe I just wanted to believe there was something more. That's what I was thinking when it all started to shift. It was just another one of those casual nights. We hit the gym together after work, laughing our way through a half-hearted workout and racing each other on the treadmill like we were still in high school. Afterward, we picked up takeout and headed back to my apartment. This had become our routine: Leo crashing at my place whenever he didn't feel like going home, tossing his gym bag by the door, and immediately making himself at home on my couch. I loved having him there, even if it made things complicated. The way he sprawled out like he owned the place, the way his laugh echoed in my small apartment, filling a silence I didn't realize I'd been living with. We watched a movie, barely paying attention, talking over most of it. When it ended, neither of us made a move to turn in. Leo just sat there, one leg folded under him, his arm resting behind me on the back of the couch, so close I could feel the warmth of his skin. "You mind if I shower?" he asked, stretching lazily, his t-shirt riding up just enough to expose a sliver of his toned abs. I blinked, suddenly struggling to focus. No, go ahead. Towels are in the usual spot." "Cool," he said, getting up and grabbing his bag, but not before giving me a smirk. "Don't miss me too much?" I rolled my eyes, trying to keep it playful. "Yeah, I'll cry the whole time." He laughed on his way to the bathroom, and then the door clicked shut behind him. A few seconds later, I heard the water turn on. I stared at the black screen of the TV for a moment, but my thoughts were anything but still. I could hear the shower running, the steady thrum of water against tile. Steam was already curling out from under the bathroom door, and the image of Leo behind that curtain. Water gliding down his back, steam softening the edges of his body, flooded my mind before I could stop it. I shook my head, trying to will the thoughts away, but They kept coming, uninvited and unwelcome. I hated how easily my mind betrayed me, how much of him lived in my imagination these days. I stood up, restless, walking around the apartment like I might find some kind of distraction in the fridge or the bookshelf. But nothing worked. My heart was racing, my hands clammy, and I cursed myself under my breath for being so wound up over something so stupid. Then I heard it. "Hey," Leo's voice called from inside the bathroom, muffled but clear. "Can you toss me a towel?" I forgot to grab one. I froze. My eyes snapped toward the closed door, and my stomach twisted into a tight knot. Yeah," I called back, trying to keep my voice even. I grabbed a towel from the cabinet and walked toward the bathroom. The steam was thick now, wrapping around the frame of the door like it was trying to escape. I hesitated just outside, towel clutching in my hands. "Just push it open," Leo said from inside. "It's not locked." I hesitated again. "You sure?" "Dude, come on," he said with a laugh. "It's not like we haven't seen each other naked before. Locker rooms, remember?" "Right, locker rooms," I mumbled, trying not to think about how those moments had affected me, even then. Swallowing hard, I reached for the doorknob and pushed it open slowly. The steam rolled out in waves, instantly fogging my glasses. The heat hit me like a wall, thick and almost oppressive, and for a second I just stood there in the doorway, towel in hand, trying to adjust to the warmth and the overwhelming scent of his body wash hanging in the air. "Over here," Leo said casually. I stepped in just far enough to see him through the half-closed shower curtain. His silhouette was blurred but still unmistakably him, tall, broad, and entirely too close. I held out the towel, my hand trembling slightly. Leo reached for it, his hand wet and warm as it brushed against mine. In that brief moment of contact, something shifted. Something subtle but undeniable. His fingers lingered just a little longer than necessary, and my breath caught. "Thanks," he said, but his voice was quieter now, different. I tried to pull away, to step back, to turn and leave before I did something stupid. But then he spoke again. "Hey, you okay?" I froze, caught in the doorway, steam thick around me. My heart raced. "I'm fine," I said too quickly. There was silence, and then he spoke again. "You've been weird lately." I opened my mouth to answer, but nothing came out. He was right. I had been weird, distant, jumpy. And now, standing here with the heat wrapping around us, and his fingers still brushing against mine, I realized why my feet were rooted to the floor, the towel loosely clutched in my hand, even though his grip had already slipped away. The warmth of his fingers lingered on my skin like a brand, impossible to ignore. "I've noticed," Leo said, softer this time. His tone wasn't accusing. If anything, it was thoughtful, almost concerned. "Not bad weird, just distant, like you're always somewhere else in your head." I swallowed hard, but my throat felt dry. I couldn't see his face clearly through the steam, but I could feel his gaze on me, even if it was partially hidden behind the curtain. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? The truth would crack everything open, and I wasn't sure we could put it back together if it shattered. He waited for a response. When I didn't speak, he let out a quiet sigh. "If it's something I did, you can tell me." "It's not you," I said quickly, the words escaping before I could filter them. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Then what is it?" His voice was closer now. I instinctively looked up and realized the curtain had been pulled back slightly. Not all the way, but just enough to see the curve of his shoulder and the slope of his chest glistening with water. His expression was partially visible through the haze. No teasing grin this time, just quiet, steady curiosity, and something else I couldn't name. "I can't," I said, my voice hoarse. "It's complicated." Leo's brow furrowed and he tilted his head slightly. "Complicated how?" I hesitated. The fear had me paralyzed, the fear of saying it, the fear of seeing the look in his eyes shift from openness to something colder, the fear that he'd step back, wrap the towel around himself, and walk out the door, taking every piece of what we had with him. But he didn't move. He just stood there, still dripping, still watching me, waiting with the same patience he always had when I was struggling. And suddenly I was tired of holding it in. "I like you," I said, the words coming out so quietly I wasn't sure if I said them aloud. But I saw the flicker in his eyes, the tiny shift in his expression, the way his lips parted slightly in surprise. The seconds stretched into eternity. The silence between us felt dense and suffocating. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. "I like you," I said again, firmer this time, as if saying it a second time might make the first less terrifying. Not like a friend, not like a joke, not because I'm lonely or confused. I've been trying to ignore it, but I can't anymore. His eyes searched mine, and for what felt like forever, he didn't speak. He didn't smile. He didn't pull the curtain closed. He didn't laugh or back away. He just stood there, letting the water wash over him, letting my words sink in like raindrops through cracked pavement. "You really feel that way?" he finally asked, his voice low. I nodded slowly, unable to do anything else. My heart thudded against my ribs, raw and exposed. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I whispered. "I didn't want to. But yeah, I do." Leo was quiet again. The steam curled between us like smoke from a fire that had already started to burn. Then, to my absolute shock, he turned off the water. The sound of the running shower stopped instantly, replaced by the low hiss of steam and the faint creak of the curtain rings. The silence was deafening. Then he pulled the curtain back. He stood there, water still trickling down his skin, his body bathed in the soft golden light from the overhead bulb. His towel was draped over the side rail, but untouched. His chest rose and fell slowly, and his eyes stayed locked on mine. He didn't reach for the towel. He didn't break the moment. If anything, it felt like he was trying to close the distance between us without taking a single step. "I had a feeling," he said finally, his voice even. I blinked. "What?" "I had a feeling," he repeated. "The way you've been acting lately, the way you look at me sometimes. I didn't want to assume anything, but—" He trailed off, his eyes softening just a little. "I'm not blind." My breath caught in my throat. "So, you're not angry?" He shook his head slowly. I'm not angry." Then he stepped forward just once, barefoot on the tile, water still dripping from his hair. He stood in front of me, no curtain between us, no jokes, no distractions, just raw, unfiltered honesty. "But I am curious," he said. I swallowed hard. "About what?" "About how long you felt this way, about why you never told me." He paused and then added, "And about what happens next." I stared at him, unsure how to respond. My emotions were a mess. Relief, fear, confusion, longing, crashing into each other like waves in a storm. "I didn't tell you because I was scared," I admitted. "I thought it would ruin everything." "Did it?" he asked. "I don't know yet," I said. Leo's lips quirked into the smallest of smiles. Then finally he reached for the towel and wrapped it around his waist. But his eyes never left mine. He stepped closer again, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body, smell the clean scent of soap and water clinging to his skin. "You're my best friend," he said, his voice low. "That doesn't change just because you feel something more. But if you're going to tell me something like that, I deserve to be honest, too." I blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" He hesitated for the first time, like he was carefully choosing his words. "I've never thought about guys that way," he said slowly. "But lately, I don't know. I've been thinking about you more, like wondering what it would be like if—" He stopped himself. "If what?" I asked quietly. He met my gaze, his expression open, vulnerable. If maybe this thing between us isn't just one-sided. The room spun slightly. I couldn't speak. Then he leaned in, not close enough to kiss me. Not yet, but just enough that I could feel the air shift between us. You said you didn't mean for it to happen, he murmured. But maybe neither did I. I stared at him, my heart pounding so loud it echoed in my ears. And I don't know what that means, he added, but I don't want to ignore it either. He reached out his hand, brushing lightly against mine. Not grabbing, not forcing, just testing. Is that okay? He asked. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. His hand curled around mine, warm and steady. The air between us seemed thicker now, like steam clinging to our skin, even outside the shower. The tile beneath my feet felt cold, grounding me, but everything else was a blur. Leo's eyes, those warm, expressive hazel eyes, were still on mine, soft but searching, like he was waiting for me to react, to say something, to break the silence that had settled between us in the aftermath of that moment. But what was there to say? Nothing could possibly measure up to the weight of what had passed between us. I opened my mouth, then closed it again. My thoughts were a mess, colliding, overlapping, none of them coherent enough to speak aloud. Yet, despite the chaos in my head, my body felt calm. Not relaxed exactly, but still, as though some deep part of me had found an anchor in him, in his touch, in the way his breath trembled against my skin. He hadn't pushed me away. He hadn't pulled back in confusion or disgust. He had leaned in. He had kissed me. Leo finally spoke, his voice low, nearly a whisper. You okay? I nodded instinctively, too quickly perhaps. My throat was tight and dry, but I forced a small sound out anyway. Yeah, I think so. His expression didn't waver, but something softened further in his eyes. I didn't mean to scare you, he said softly. I had to know. I'm not scared, I said, and this time my voice was steadier. Just surprised. Leo chuckled, running a hand through his damp hair. Yeah, well, that makes two of us. I leaned back against the wall. The cool tile was a small shock against my skin. The bathroom was still thick with humidity, the mirror completely fogged over now. And I realized how long we must have been in there. But the world outside didn't matter anymore. The outside world felt distant, and I spoke after a pause, dragging the word out because I wasn't sure how to continue. What now? Leo stepped closer, slow and unhurried, like he wasn't ready to leave the space we were sharing. He reached out and brushed a stray drop of water from my shoulder. The touch was so gentle it almost didn't register, but it sent a ripple through me nonetheless. I don't know, he admitted, and his honesty hit me harder than anything else. I've been thinking about this, about you for a while now, and it scared the hell out of me, to be honest. But tonight, seeing you like that, seeing the way you looked at me, he trailed off, shaking his head. I couldn't pretend anymore. I thought you were straight. The words tumbled out awkwardly but honestly, and he gave me a small, unsure smile. Yeah, so did I. Maybe I still am, I don't know. But I know what I felt when I kissed you, and I know it wasn't nothing. My breath caught. He wasn't saying this lightly. He wasn't just playing along. He meant it, every word. I've liked you for a long time, I confessed before I could stop myself. And I didn't say anything because, well, I figured it would ruin everything. You thought I'd freak out, he said, considering it for a moment. Maybe, but not now. He stepped even closer, our bodies nearly touching again. I'm not freaking out. I'm standing here with you, in a towel, in your bathroom, after kissing you. All I'm thinking is why the hell did I wait so long to figure this out? I laughed, and it felt real. It felt good. The tension between us had shifted. It was still there, yes, but it wasn't anxiety anymore. It was something else. something charged with anticipation and possibility. "Do you want to go back out there?" I asked. "Or just stay in here forever, where it's steamy and weird, and we don't have to explain anything to the outside world?" Leo grinned. "Tempting, but your shampoo is starting to burn my eyes." I handed him a towel, and for the first time in the last 20 minutes, we moved around each other without that tight coil of uncertainty in the air. There was still so much unsaid between us, and I knew this wasn't over. Within minutes, things would escalate. I was right. As we got dressed in my bedroom, the air was filled with the unspoken understanding of two people who had crossed an invisible line and weren't ready to pretend they hadn't. Leo moved slowly, pulling his shirt over his head and running a hand through his hair as he glanced at me. "You know," he said, sitting on the edge of the bed, "I always thought we had something different, even back in high school. I just never put a name to it." I sat beside him, close but not quite touching. "What changed?" He turned his head to look at me, his expression softer than I'd ever seen it. "You did. Or maybe I did. Maybe it was just finally being honest with myself." Silence returned, but this time it felt like a held breath. When he reached over and let his fingers brush against mine, I didn't flinch. Instead, I turned my hand, lacing our fingers together slowly, deliberately. His skin was still warm and slightly damp, his thumb tracing small circles against mine. "I'm scared," I admitted quietly, "that this is just curiosity for you, something temporary, and that when it fades, I'll lose my best friend." Leo's grip on my hand tightened just slightly. "I don't know what this is yet," he said, "but I know it's not just curiosity. It's not a passing thing, and I'm not going anywhere." I believed him, but I had never expected what was still to come. Because the moment he suddenly leaned back on the bed, propping himself up with one arm and absently rubbing a towel through his still damp hair, I felt like my world had been spun sideways and dropped back down at a slight dizzy tilt. Everything around me felt the same. My room, the soft hum of the ceiling fan, the muffled sounds of traffic far below. But nothing felt familiar anymore. The air carried a weight now, not oppressive, but dense with something unspoken, stretching between us like a rubber band pulled just tight enough to tremble. He sat there, shirtless, his jeans slung low on his hips, water still glistening faintly on his chest where the towel hadn't quite reached. But what undid me more than anything else was the way he kept looking at me. Not constantly, not obviously, but in small flickering glances, like he wanted to say something but wasn't sure if it was safe. We didn't speak at first. Neither of us did. We just sat there, pretending to be lost in the quiet. My thoughts were loud enough to drown out the world. Finally, Leo broke the silence, his voice softer than usual. "You keep looking at me like you're waiting for me to disappear." I blinked, startled by his directness. "What?" He glanced over at me and didn't look away this time. "Like you're not sure if this is real? Like I might take it all back?" I swallowed hard because he wasn't wrong. "Can you blame me?" I asked. "No," he admitted, his voice dropping lower like he didn't want to scare me off. "But I meant what I said. I'm not going anywhere." I nodded slowly, then hesitated. The words were burning the back of my throat. "I just don't know how far this goes, or if I'm the only one who's feeling it as strongly as I am." Leo shifted on the bed, twisting to face me more directly. His expression was serious now, the kind of serious I'd only seen when he talked about something that really mattered. "It's not just you," he said. "Trust me." I looked at him, trying to read between the lines, but he didn't flinch. His gaze held mine, steady, grounding. For the first time that night, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't all in my head. Suddenly, Leo stood up, not in a rushed or aggressive way, but like he couldn't sit still anymore. He crossed the room to where I stood near the closet, my back still half turned as if poised to flee. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could feel the residual heat of the shower still clinging to his skin. He reached out, his fingers brushing my arm lightly before settling on my waist. "Can I?" he asked. The question was so quiet I almost missed it. I nodded, my heart rattling inside my chest like a stone in a glass jar. His hand slid up my side, warm and slow under the hem of my shirt. I gasped, not because it startled me, but because it felt so good to be touched like that, like I was something delicate and worth exploring. His other hand moved to my cheek, tilting my face just enough so he could see me clearly. There was something searching in his gaze again, like he was trying to make sure this wasn't a dream for either of us. "You're shaking," he murmured. "I know," I whispered. "I don't mean to." "It's okay," he said, and leaned forward so our foreheads touched. "I am too." That surprised me. Leo was always the confident one, the smooth one, the guy who could flirt without flinching and laugh off anything that got too serious. But in this moment, he was just as raw as I was, just as vulnerable, and that somehow made everything feel safer. He kissed me again, and this time it wasn't cautious. It wasn't experimental. It was slow, deliberate, and impossibly tender. His lips moved over mine like he was memorizing me, like he was committing the shape and taste of this moment to memory, in case it never happened again. My hands found his shoulders, then the back of his neck, and I pulled him closer, not out of desperation, but because it felt natural, like this was what we had always been meant to do. But the craziest part was yet to come. Teetering on the edge, we stood there, hearts pounding, breaths caught, silently daring each other to make the final move. I couldn't tell who leaned in first. Maybe we both did. Maybe it didn't matter. All I knew was that one moment, space still existed between us, and the next, it didn't. Leo's lips met mine, but this time there was no hesitation, no whisper of uncertainty. It wasn't like before. This was real, full, claiming. There was no more asking permission with his breath, no searching my eyes for approval. This kiss told me he had made up his mind, that whatever had unraveled in him had finally clicked into place, and I responded as if I had been holding my breath for years. My hands found his jaw, then slid into his hair, fingers curling into the damp strands as I pulled him closer. His mouth opened against mine, our breaths tangling, and I kissed him like I was starving, like I had spent years suppressing this part of myself, of us. And now, finally, it was free. He groaned softly into my mouth, surprised, maybe overwhelmed. It made my chest tighten, my grip firmer. Leo gently pushed me back until I hit the edge of the bed. We barely paused for breath before he followed me down, his hands moving with that same mix of curiosity and certainty. His fingers slid under my shirt, grazing my sides as if he were learning me for the first time, but not timidly. There was hunger in him now, hunger and heat. "Tell me if I'm going too fast," he whispered, his forehead resting against mine. "You're not," I breathed, my voice ragged, trembling. "Please, don't stop." That was all he needed. His hands slipped under my shirt, pulling it up, and I sat just enough to let him take it off. It hit the floor somewhere I couldn't see. Leo's gaze raked over me with something that sent fire straight through my chest. He leaned down again, pressing soft, lingering kisses along my jaw, down my neck, dragging heat across my skin like embers. I arched into him without meaning to, my hands finding the hem of his shirt now. "Are you sure?"